Right, ladies and gentlemen, we could come to order, please. Welcome to the DC committee meeting. A little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. There's no fire drill tonight, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest safe exit, which is at the back of the hall and either side of this wall out there. And we meet out by Memorial Park. Okay. For the benefit of members of the public watching or participating in this meeting, I would like to explain who everyone is. My name is Councillor Tony Durrant, and I'm the new chair of this committee. To my right are the councillors who will be making the decisions on the applications this evening, and on my immediate right and left are the officers who will be presenting the applications and providing advice, committee, and kicking me if I make a mistake. So I'm looking forward to that. Development Control Committee is a regulatory committee and not a political meeting. The committee will be considering the published papers and examining the evidence brought before us tonight, and will make decisions based on planning reasons. We are guided by national and local planning policy and guidance. At the appropriate time, I will invite speakers to contribute to the meeting in order to set out, in the order set out in the update paper. May I ask all speakers, including visiting members, to speak clearly and to keep points made on the application to material reasons only. No further dialogue between members of the committee and speakers will be permitted once the questioning is finished. All speakers will be reminded of their permitted speaking time, and will be advised when they have 1 minute left where they should gather their thoughts for their conclusion. May I ask all committee members to avoid repetition and to keep any comments on each planning application to a maximum of 4 minutes. This evening we have one application on the agenda, and we're anticipated to finish by 9 o'clock. I understand that planning can be emotive, and I ask that everyone remains polite and professional, as they always do throughout this meeting. Thank you. One more little bit of housekeeping. If you, for any reason, need a comfort break, this is to members. If you leave the room, we will suspend the meeting until you return. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to participate or vote. So make a lot of noise when you get up, so we notice it. Right. Okay. We go to item 1. Which is apologies for absence and substitutions. We have apologies from Councillor Hussey, and he is subbed by Councillor Bowes. Thank you. And we have apologies from Councillor Howard Sorrell with no sub. Our item 2 is our first real action. It is to appoint a vice chair. So I ask for nominations, if there are any. Okay. Right, Andy, you had your hand up first.
Nominate Councillor Freeman.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Then I will ask for a vote. Vote is by show of hands, as always. So vote away, please. Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Councillor Miller is abstaining. So that's a majority vote. Welcome. And you have a seat pre-warmed for you. So thank you for taking up the challenge. It's much appreciated. Okay. So Councillor Bowes is duly elected as Vice Chair of Development Control Committee. Carissa Freeman, sorry. That's it. One to everybody else. Right. Right. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest by members? Take that as a no. Any urgent matters to raise? Take that as a no. Thank you. Where are we? Item 5 is the minutes held on April the 23rd. I did not attend that meeting, therefore I cannot comment or vote. Do I have someone who will move in favour, and a seconder. That's Councillor McCormick and Councillor Miller as seconder. Thank you very much. Okay, right. Sorry?
Are the minutes agreed?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Are the minutes agreed by everybody? Agreed. Thank you. Cheers. Right. Item 6 is the applications for planning permission. Just before we kick off, we've all recently enjoyed the training sessions, so just a few reminders as we go into the meat of the meeting. Questions asked of officers and speakers must be factual. They do not require a preamble or context, just the question. The context and any answers will be dealt with in the debate session. It will be one question each and a supplementary question if necessary. Okay, following our training last week, we should have already posed our questions to the officers, as we were asked to do. But if you didn't manage to, or you have something new that's arisen from the update paper, then you are at liberty to ask that question of officers. If you did ask questions and you've had answers, please don't restate this evening. Right. Speakers, when you are asked, please come forward to the seat on the right-hand side in front of you. You will have 4 minutes. If there are a group wanting to speak, it is 4 minutes collectively, not 4 minutes each. And you will receive a reminder with 1 minute to go, and that is, as I said earlier, the time for you to start concluding your comments. The order will be, as per the update paper, it will be parish town councils, objectors, supporters, and any visiting ward councillors. Okay, speakers, when you are asked a question, please just answer. This is not an opportunity to restate your whole case. You will have already done that. The officer now will introduce the proposal. The application in front of us is application 2400930, full. It's viewpoint at Basing View.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the demolition of the existing building and redevelopment of the site to provide 326 apartments and ancillary communal facilities with commercial floor space, use Class E, associated access, landscaping and infrastructure. The application site is located within Basing View to the eastern end of what is defined as Midtown as per local policy SS8. The site is a dual frontage with access from both upper and lower Basing View to the north and south respectively. The existing site includes a derelict office building of a maximum 7 stories in height. Just for reference, the Village Hotel is located adjacent to the northeast of the application site, and Mountbatten House to the southeast, a Grade 2 listed building with a Grade 2 listed registered parking gardens to the rear. Both of these structures are within the uptown part of Basing View, just for reference. The proposed site plan shows the proposed build form and layout of the proposed building, with the existing access along Upper Basing View being proposed as a sole point of vehicular access. The existing access from Lower Basing View is proposed to be stopped up with the creation of footpath landscaping lay-by in this location. Proposed parking can be seen adjacent to the northern and western elevations of the build form, with basement parking proposed below with the access to the western elevation of the application site. The proposed parking provision is for 124 car parking spaces, which it is acknowledged falls below this parking standards, but as set out in the report is considered acceptable due to the sustainable location of the application site. Retained and proposed landscaping can be seen around the perimeter of the application site, with a central podium including private amenity space and landscaping at ground floor level. This in front of you is a proposed illustrative view from the south of Lower Basing View, and clearly this is at an elevated height to give full context and detail to the proposed development. As you look at this, to the left you can see what is referred to as the taller element, which measures around 46 metres in height at 15 stories. The central horizontal link measures around 28 metres at 9 stories, whilst what's referred to as the corner turner measures approximately 34.5 metres at 11 stories, and with the feature corner dropping back down to 9 stories again. You can also see on the previous image the glazing and balustrade glazing and landscaping atop the central horizontal link and surround or above the feature corner. It should also be noted that the scheme has been amended to reduce the overall height, bulk and scale of the development, which has led to a reduction in the tallest element from 21 stories to 15 stories at a maximum height, a reduction in the quantum of development from 370 apartments to 326, and the introduction of an additional rooftop amenity space above the central horizontal link. The development is considered to be sustainable, having regard to the NPPF and the 3 dimensions of sustainability relating to the economic, environmental and social impacts. In terms of overall planning balance, the following has been afforded substantial positive weight: previously developed land and efficient use of land. Significant positive weight has been afforded to the quantum of housing development provided and the sustainable location of the development. Minor positive weight has been afforded to the affordable housing contribution. Neutral weight has been afforded to the following: policy SS8 overall, biodiversity net gain, given that it's just over the requisite thresholds, design and the impact upon heritage assets. Minor negative weight has been afforded to the loss of employment floor space, the lack of strict adherence to the location requirements of policy SS8, and the lack of policy compliant open space contributions. For the reasons set out in the officer's report, the application is considered to be acceptable having regard to national and local policies and having taken all relevant material considerations into account. In terms of the update paper, we have just a summary of the viewing panel which was undertaken last Friday. We have a report correction just to ensure that consistency is reported across the main paper. In terms of conditions, we have a note that pre-commencement conditions have been agreed with the applicant in this instance. Condition 2 has been updated to omit some erroneous wording, whilst conditions 11, 13, 14 and 16 have been amended to enable demolition to be carried out prior to the requirement of these details to be submitted. There's also a note in relation to comments from the local highway authority. Officers had sought clarity from the local highway authority in relation to their request for active travel improvement contributions in light of the applicant's viability position. The local highway authority have confirmed that they have withdrawn their request for the contribution and maintained at their position of no objection. It should also be noted that officers are aware of a briefing note circulated to members of the Development Control Committee ahead of the meeting. Whilst this does not form part of the application submission, reference is just drawn in relation to payments to the council as freeholder. Just to note that these are not material planning considerations. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and obligations outlined in the main paper and update paper.
We will now move to speakers. I don't see any parish or town councillors here. We had one objector, Mr. Wilshire, Robert Wilshire. I don't see him here either. So we can move straight to those in support, which are Messrs. Woodrow and Cherrett. If you'd like to come forward, take the seats, and when you're ready to speak, press the right-hand button. You have 4 minutes collectively, with a reminder at 1 minute, so you can get your conclusion ready.
Is that working? Good. Okay. Good evening, Chair and members. I am Taylor Sherritt, Director at Turley, the planning agent for the proposals. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. You have before you a detailed planning application for the demolition of the existing building and redevelopment of the site to provide 326 build-to-rent apartments, ancillary communal facilities and the commercial floor space with significant new landscaping and public realm. The site's redevelopment for a wholly purpose-built build-to-rent proposal is the first of its kind in Basingstoke, and as noted within the officer report, the principle of which is acceptable and therefore supported by officers. The proposal has been through a detailed design process which has culminated in a high-quality scheme which is supported by the council design team and meets the overall objectives of achieving regeneration in Basingview. Despite the applicant demonstrating through a detailed viability assessment that affordable housing and other contributions were unviable, as verified by the council's own experts, the applicant has proposed a contribution towards affordable housing and open space improvements. The proposed development will generate over £450,000 in council tax annually, alongside more than £6 million a year in resident spending on retail, leisure, goods and services, supporting the nearby town centre. New co-working and business incubator space designed to complement the wider business park and encourage business startups is also proposed. The development will provide a number of ESG benefits, including a 7.5% improvement on target CO2 emissions, the inclusion of photovoltaics and air source heat pumps, and demonstrates a biodiversity net gain. The proposals are in accordance with the development plan and will deliver much needed housing for Basingstoke. We take this opportunity to endorse the officer recommendation to approve this planning application. Finally, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee, and I'll now pass you over to Mark Woodrow of Package Living to say a few words.
Thank you, Taylor. Chair, councillors. My name is Mark Woodrow. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Package Living. I would like to take a couple of minutes of your time to talk to you about Package Living and what we can propose to deliver for Basingstoke if you approve this application this evening. With our partners Buccleuch Property, we submitted this planning application in May last year. But we began speaking to officers and members and consulting the community all the way back in 2022. And when we bought the Viewpoint building from the council. So it's taken a long time to get here, but we wanted to get it right, and we wanted to bring forward the best possible proposals for this site. Over that time, we made a number of changes at stakeholder requests, a reduction to scale and massing, as you've heard, a twofold increase to 124 fully allocated and 24-hour managed parking spaces, which is well beyond our young rental customer expectation, and we've added 3 car club spaces. That was important to us because we're a developer that we aren't a developer that will build this and leave it. We're long-term investors, and with this application, we're making a long-term commitment to Basingstoke.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. The fact we were in this for the long term is also why we are so focused on quality. From the building design and the considerable public and private landscaping to the customer renting the whole building, including the great amenity spaces, as well as their apartment. Anyone who's visited our award-winning schemes in Milton Keynes, including your senior officers and members, can attest to the commitment to this quality. But we also price it to be affordable for local people in the town centre and key services. If you approve this application, we will deliver a building that I think you will be proud of. The landscaping and planting around the entrance to the building will create a new green gateway into Basing View. This will help to kickstart the wider regeneration of Basing View.
If you can start to wrap up, please.
And we will provide high-quality rental accommodation, helping to raise the standard of rented accommodation across Basingstoke by setting a high bar for others to meet. Thank you.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much on timing. Much appreciated. Thank you. We now move to questions by councillors to the speakers. We have Councillor Miller, Councillor Bound, and Councillor McCormick. So, Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The one thing that has caused a bit of discussion, certainly on the Planning Committee during the viewing panel, is the ratio of car spaces to the number of apartments and the size. And there's discussion on that in the report. You say it's a managed car parking environment. Could you describe that management philosophy? Because notwithstanding the young occupants that you anticipate, interesting comment, people are not going to be sitting in those apartments and rely on the centre of town. It's a natural thing these days for people to be using cars. Could you elaborate on the management of the parking scheme, please?
Certainly, and thank you for your question. It's important to understand, if we think about the parking, we understand the management of the whole building. So this is a long-term rental offer, and we have a 24-hour managed building here. And so we're able to manage not just the building, but also the car parking spaces. All of the car parking spaces are on a first come, first served basis to people who want to rent the apartments. And they won't be able to bring a car and rent an apartment unless they also rent a parking space. So there will be allocated parking spaces, all of those 124 spaces. They will then be policed and made sure that only the people with fobs to enter the car park will enter the car park. And as I say, if they have a car and they want to rent with us, then they'll go and rent elsewhere. And whilst that, you may say, well, that will cut down our ability to rent homes to customers. We feel that's the type of offer that Basingstoke, as well as many other towns and cities across the country, is starting to offer in really sustainable, great public transport areas like this. So hopefully that explains a little bit about the management.
Right, thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Miller?
I'll take the opportunity, Chair. Thank you very much. Class E commercial space is also included in your offer. What do you anticipate how that's going to be occupied?
So not unlike a number of commercial offers and buildings in the city centre, when we come to get planning, an application stage like this, we don't have a pre-let space for that. That's, that will need to be built, and that will need to be seen probably for someone to take that space. But I would say a couple of things about that space. Firstly, it's Class E, so we have lots of different options for that space. And as opposed to a build for sale development, where they may build that and not really care about the ground floor because it's not really bringing value, and sort of hand that across to a management company and walk away, we really care about that because this building needs to operate every day of its working life to make sure people stay in the building. So we want really interesting uses at ground floor, independent uses, independent offers, and we don't mind too much about the rental income from the ground floor. It doesn't really figure in the numbers. What we're trying to do is make a really exciting, really viable residential location. So that's our philosophy in terms of who we're looking for as an occupier or a number of occupiers. And I think there's 7,000 square feet, around 7,000 square feet at the base of this building, which will hopefully add to that vibrancy and that really active offer at ground floor.
Thank you. We have Councillor Bound was next up with his hand.
Thank you. Good evening. You mentioned photovoltaic. I somehow missed that in the report. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so it was within the energy statement that was submitted with the application. It's essential PV panels that will be on the rooftops that aren't subject to the roof terraces. So that will go into the overall energy strategy. So Mike, do you want to add a few more?
And this is, I'm really glad you asked that question because it links to things which are fundamental to us, fundamental to our joint venture partner at Buccleuch, and fundamental to all investors in these types of buildings. ESG and environmental performance are so important to people, and they're important to customers as well. Customers come in and they ask you questions about those things. All the buildings that we've got operating currently, the nearest one to here would be Milton Keynes, where your members and officers came. They ask those kind of questions. Where's our energy coming from? How much renewables are you generating? So those types of things are really important to us. All of the energy that's being generated on this site and used, first of all, we go for a fabric first approach, so it'll be a really well insulated building, and all of the energy uses are electrical energy uses, and that speaks to the greening of our UK energy grid, and it means that over time this building can start to become a really low use of carbon in operation. So it's really important to us. We've never used fossil fuels in any of our buildings, and we want to make sure that we're using really clean electric energy to power all of these. And the photovoltaics is just part of that.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question?
No.
Thank you. Councillor McCormick?
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions. The first one, I've not been to see your site in Milton Keynes, but I'm familiar with Milton Keynes, and it has a unique approach to transport and parking. Blue bays, purple bays, green bays, whatever. In terms of, if you could expand a bit on your Milton Keynes operation. So I got your packaged living document sent to me. Approximately how many dwellings have you got in your Milton Keynes scheme? Approximately how many parking bays have you got there? And approximately how much are you charging for parking relative to the rent that people are paying for each dwelling?
I can certainly deal with the first two. The last one I might need a bit of time to answer. So the first two, we've got 294 homes. This is the Almere, where we have a Home Views voted the best building in the southeast. We have 294 homes, 83 parking spaces. It's around about a similar ratio to here, and we would consider that MK is a more car-borne city than Basingstoke and this location. So it's a similar ratio. In terms of the charges for that parking, I'd have to just refer, if I can, and check back on that. But in effect, the parking doesn't come with the apartment. You do pay an extra rent for the apartment, and that's really important for us because we don't automatically allocate parking spaces to apartments. So we're able to do that on a on-demand type basis, and then we're able to manage exactly who has those parking spaces and exactly the right cars in those parking spaces, because I recognise that's important.
Okay.
Yes. So what we're looking at here is a scheme that has a similar sort of approximately a third parking bays to dwellings ratio. As things stand, the nearest bus stop is 500 metres away from your proposed scheme. That hasn't cited any significant concerns, but one of the things that we used to have in Basingview was a shuttle bus that went into the centre of Basingview and went direct to the railway station, whereas the existing bus services go into the bus station. So you have to change at the bus station to get a bus to the railway station. It has been mooted that this shuttle bus service, which went to the west of the town centre...
Sorry, can we get to a question, please?
Would you be prepared to make a contribution to that as part of your developer contributions?
I think if that was something that members were looking for and they could agree on that, then we would have no objection. I think it's been talked about in the report, we've supplied a contribution above and beyond what we're necessary to supply because we want to do the right thing by the town, and that's effectively been allocated by officers in conjunction with us, but not necessarily determined by us. And so if that's something that members were looking for and had the ability to do, I'd have to obviously defer to the chair and your advisors for that, then we'd have no objection to that whatsoever. I would say that, as I think we touched on in the previous question, it is a reasonably young demographic who live in these buildings. You can imagine someone who wants to rent in the town centre. They might be working in the shopping centre. They might be working locally with a lot of key workers in our buildings. And it really is surprising. I'm older than that demographic. I know the number of people in this room are older than that demographic. It is surprising how many of those people don't have cars these days, expensive insurance, expensive to keep. And these buildings really talk to that, really, in terms of live, working and playing within, sort of 15 minutes walk of your building.
Thank you very much for that. It's just a reminder to members that car parking is not a material planning consideration. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, given the absence of all the
cost of car parking is not a material planning consideration. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
From your other developments, do you have any figure for the number of deliveries there will be from various for online sales? And also, I haven't noticed it though I haven't read all the paperwork. Are you planning some sort of safe system for the delivery of that stuff?
That's a great question because that's something we grapple with all the time. I've got members of my team who are, constantly thinking ahead and designing our next phase of buildings, and that's something that's changed over the years that I've been doing this. Is how many online deliveries. Our Manchester building I was at last week, it has 750 deliveries a week. So it has about 3 deliveries per apartment per week. And so it's a really important point. And there we had to enlarge the design of the postal room a number of times during the design process, which obviously we can do because we're in control of that design and build process, to make sure that happens. It also intimated in your question, safes, lockboxes, those kind of ways are a brilliant way for us to manage that as a building, as an operator, because, pass reports come in or whoever comes in through the door and the person isn't necessarily there and the concierge hasn't necessarily got, can't keep lots of things behind the desk. So they go into safes, they get SMS'd, they get texted with those items having arrived, and then they get encouraged to pick those up so that we can keep the whole process going. But it's a really good question.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
I guess the question is, are you actually planning to do that for this development?
100% yes.
Thank you. Get the hang of it in a minute. The suggestion raised by Councillor McCormack, perhaps officers could comment on that, please. Oh, yeah, and can the speakers please return to the public area? Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, I absolutely recognise why the question was raised, and I also recall the Basingview sort of bus service there before. I think the key thing is here is that it relates to what can be legitimately taken forward as a financial planning obligation. So the tests of what is required, what it could go towards, etc. I think the report sets out that the monies that have been forthcoming or put forward are towards affordable housing and open space based on the policy requirements there around those. They are justified in that regard. The response from Hampshire Highways, as set out in the update paper, makes clear that although there was some discussion about sustainable transport contributions, it wasn't a necessity, it wasn't needed to make the development acceptable in planning terms, and therefore there wouldn't be a justification in planning terms to divert any of that money away from the open space and affordable housing towards something else, notwithstanding the fact that I doubt that that would actually achieve what wasn't necessarily intended about an additional bus service in any case. So I hope that clarification's of assistance.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to questions to officers. I remind people, if you've already asked a question of the officers, please don't repeat it. Who wants to?
Thank you, Chair. If I could make a comment on what you just said about if we had individually approached officers, which I have, by the way, because Brian and I have had a couple of discussions. The rest of this committee doesn't know what the answers were. So it's one-way traffic. So if we have a question, my colleagues don't know what questions I asked. So anyway.
Councillor Miller, surely the point is that it's your question, it's not everybody else's question, so they don't need to know what your question was, so long as you've had an answer. If they haven't got the same question, then they won't be raising it.
But I'm contributing to the overall discussion, my understanding. I quite agree with you saying that.
Yeah, but what you learn in answer to your question, no doubt, you'll be contributing during the debate.
My question to officers is not about parking this time. It's about the affordable housing offset that is being gathered here. I believe it's in paragraph 8.44 of the report. That tells me that there's going to be no affordable housing within this development. And so this is all market. The inference is also that market housing, it's not cheap in Basingstoke, and it's way above what the housing associations would classify as rent. And it's one of the problems we've had in Basingstoke. My question is, we are taking this as an exception because of its sustainable location, I'm assuming, on this basis. I don't know, but these exceptions, if we get any more of these kind of applications, is this going to be the norm for the council to take these offsets?
No, just in terms of the affordable housing contributions, that's not tied to the sustainability aspects. That's tied to the viability assessment that was submitted as part of the scheme, which is allowed for within the local policy and the MPPF. So this isn't an exception in that regard. It's covered under the local plan policy. Does that clarify?
It does to a certain extent. All I'm saying is that this development of 324 properties do not contribute any more to our supply of affordable housing. I think that's my observation based on your reply. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification, you're absolutely right, Councillor, there's no on-site affordable housing proposed because of the viability, and as Brian mentioned, that is allowed for under policy CN1. So the process was to submit an open book viability appraisal. That's come in, it's been published online. That's been subject to our own appointed viability experts in accordance with the housing SPD, and they've agreed effectively that it's not viable. So there's no on-site affordable housing. However, there is the £250,000 off-site contribution, so that does not equate very clearly to the same as what the on-site would have been, but it nevertheless is still given some minor positive weight in the overall balance, because obviously it's more than not providing anything. So that's an off-site contribution that would go towards affordable housing in the Basingstoke area. So I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chair. I was under the impression from what was said after the planning meeting on Friday that there wasn't any photovoltaic, but there obviously is. Could it be pointed out to me maybe on that, where it is?
Thank you, Councillor Bound. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think when we discussed it on Friday, I meant in terms of there wasn't any additional space for those bits where the amenity was. In terms of the energy statement that's been referred to by the Speaker, the energy statement, and I've just referenced it here, if you just give me a second, does refer to photovoltaic panels in the areas not covered by the amenity spaces. And then if you refer to conditions, so that's in the energy statement submitted with the planning application. And then if you refer to conditions, that adherence to that energy statement is then captured in condition number 25.
All right, thank you, Mike.
So effectively, those would be secured through this process.
Thank you. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question on waste collection, section 8.169 in the report and condition 17. 8.169 states there are still matters outstanding relating to waste collection provision. However, it is considered these details could be secured by condition, and this matter can be dealt with post-decision, see condition 17. So I looked at condition 17, what concerns me is that we avoid a repeat occurrence of what happened at Churchill Place, where we did not get local authority waste collection. The residents there were paying for it through their council tax and were then charged additionally for an inadequate private waste collection service, and it caused all sorts of problems. What sort of reassurance can we have as a committee that we will not have a repeat occurrence of that, and that we will have standard local authority contracted waste services provided through the residents' council tax?
Thank you, Councillor McCormack. I think we can't give any certainty that it would necessarily be through that. It might be through a management company, and I think that's why the condition 17 picks up the requirement to provide both the facility but also the details of the management and servicing. The one, I do know the Churchill, is it Churchill Plaza that you referred? Yeah, I do know the Churchill Plaza one in particular. I think the difficulty there was particularly locational, and obviously the very long access ramp in and out. Obviously here it is a slightly different location because it's got the dual frontage in terms of the proximity to Basing View. So I think there would be some material differences between the schemes, but I do recognise the point. I think the key thing is, like I say, we can secure details of how things get provided in terms of refuse facilities, so that's what condition 17 does. We can't dictate through the planning permission who does that, and that's why the management part comes into it. I hope that helps.
Yep.
My understanding of Churchill Place was conditions were not met for local authority refuse collection. are we confident that the conditions will be met for local authority refuse collection in this case?
I think it's just been made clear that we can't say who will collect the waste. We don't have that power.
That's not my question, with all due respect. I'm saying, are we confident the conditions can be met?
You said for local authority collection. Waste will be collected. It might not necessarily be by the local authority. I think it's the officer's answer.
I think just to add to that as well, the basis of the condition is to ensure that the planning authority still has control to make sure that whatever waste collection is provided is acceptable. It may not be to the standard that then enables local authority waste collection, but it would nevertheless still be to an acceptable standard, even if it was managed by someone else. I think the key thing for the committee is that the control is there through the planning condition to secure that.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, in a couple of places in the report, it states that the accessible apartments will be on the ground floor, and also that parking will be on the ground floor. Can we assume that there will be an accessible route between those two things?
Just to summarise what we've just mumbled about, that probably should have been a question for the applicant. Mike, do you? Okay, I'm allowed to ask the applicant to answer that one, if they could, please.
I think the question was, are the allocated disabled bays located close to the accessible homes in this development? And the answer is yes, and there is level access. There's actually something called Part M42 of the building regulations on this whole development, which means that every single apartment from all the places in the public realm could be accessed through level access across that area.
Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, section 8.175, we talk about the compliance with EM5, and it says here it doesn't. So where does that leave us?
Yes, so just as was referred to in the intro, that leaves us in terms of the balance. That is just to clarify the exact weight that we have provided for that. That's minor negative weight is how we've afforded that in the planning balance. So we're clear that there is a conflict there, that there's a requirement coming forward of £250,000. The policy requirement is for a higher figure than that, therefore we've afforded the minor negative weight.
So just so I clarify, the intention would be to work toward a higher figure from where we are currently now.
If viability improved, it potentially could.
I think the key thing is to consider it on what's put forward now. So that's the 250,000. That's as set out in paragraph 8175. That's below the requirement for EM5. I think that's then reflected in the overall planning balance. So in section 10, it's basically saying there is a conflict. It's below what policy EM5 would require, but taking into account all other matters, including the amenity space on the site, access to where it is, etc. It's felt that it is a conflict, but not one that weighs particularly heavily against the development. The reference to the review mechanism is set out in the obligations. That's if the development doesn't commence within 12 months, there would be a review. If the viability improves, there could be more. But I think on the basis that you don't know that at this stage, you can only assess the application based on the 250,000 and the minor conflict with the policy in that regard.
Just finally then, is there going to be a comment put in the in the paperwork to cover that?
Sorry, to cover the fact that there's a conflict or to cover the review mechanism?
A conflict.
That is set out in the paper already in terms of the overall planning balance.
Thank you, Chair.
If we are done with questions for the officers, thank the officers for answering. Thank you. We can move to debate.
Okay, so from the site viewing on Friday, we had a good look around the area. I can't say I've been in there for a very long time, so it's all quite new to me. We had a look up at where the building would be from the east drop side, and it certainly seemed to me as though it would be very dominant on the skyline. But I think on balance, I don't think the location of this new build will be inappropriate. And it, after all, is taking over an ageing 70s office block, which is already there in location and cannot be apparently updated in any way. So it has to come down for something else to take its place. So I'm sort of swayed that in the direction that that aspect of the build is okay. I'm not particularly happy about the lack of parking, but on the other hand, anybody who's going to rent in that building would know the situation. If they haven't got a parking space allocated, then I can't see, if they've got a car, that they're going to want to rent in the building. They will go elsewhere. So I don't really see that the parking is particularly of a problem. The lack of affordable housing within it is very disappointing as far as I'm concerned, whilst appreciating that the viability has been looked at by an independent assessor. And after all, there are going to be 300 dwellings there, plus 326 towards housing land supply. Another negative, as far as I'm concerned, is the lack of contributions. 500 maybe in total as against 790,000, I think was mentioned in the report. So there are a number of negatives, but I am sort of swaying towards agreeing with the officer recommendation, but I'm not moving it. I would like to hear what other people have to say.
Right, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McCall.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, this one, especially the fact that pre-application there was going to be more dwellings at a greater height. But when you look at the height of the buildings in Basing View, actually height is not really a consideration at all. You know, it's lots of high buildings. What has concerned a lot of us is the potential for people to be parking outside and what that impact might have were that the case. I don't think we have enough information on that tonight to be able to make an informed decision about it, in all honesty. I'm making an assumption on that the Milton Keynes scheme works, that we have tenants that rent parking, that they're happy if they're not paying for their parking, that they will be parking elsewhere, and that Milton Keynes, being the car-friendly city that it is, has got reasonable parking elsewhere. That's not my experience parking in the centre of Milton Keynes, I hasten to add, but that's just my personal experience of going there during the working day. But it does worry me. I presume the highways officers have been out and visited the site. Highways don't have an objection. The other thing that does stick in the craw a bit is waste collection. Mainly because I think the site specifics are different for this site to what they are or were with Churchill Place. But but when we're looking at a development scheme of this size and this location, we have to consider everything in the round. We have to consider what the retail unit might be used for. I imagine it will become a shop. I imagine it will be selling coffee and things and newspapers and things and food. There used to be a parade of shops not far from there in Basingview. It's now occupied by Sovereign Network Group. I think having 350 people there may provide sufficient need for a shop unit there, but that's beyond the gift of us tonight to weigh that as a consideration. It's got Class C use. It can be used for pretty much anything on Class C. The nearest shop is Norton Hill. The next nearest shop is Alongside Link. So it is tricky. What I am having a problem with is the affordable housing. So, okay, we'll be using previously developed land. There's a quantum of housing, but if it's not going to be affordable housing, to what extent does it resolve our housing issues, and also the policy compliance, location SSA and EMS non-compliance? I'm in a mixed mind about that because, okay, Basingview, it's an office-based area, it's quite an urban area. Just across the road is East Rock Park. So I'm not going to move at this point. I'll listen to what others say in the debate and inform my conclusion from that.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Interesting listening to some of the points. I'm going to latch on to a couple of things that Councillor Cormack has mentioned about waste. We are going through a change in Basingstoke, as are most local authorities at the moment, and I believe we've got an all-member briefing coming up tomorrow night on waste. The interesting one is the food waste. And we've had our conversations and our distribution of our latest publication has dropped into everybody's doorstep. And we're going to have an extra box and an extra box on top of what we've got already. And I'm just thinking 324 apartments, and they're all going to have an extra box. And the management of that, and I think the question by Councillor McCormack is very pertinent on how that is going to be managed, because that is borough-wide. And the last thing I think we got from a briefing, because I'm on ENI as well, was that, yes, flats, we've got to investigate that. Well, we're having, in this particular instance, a high concentration of flats in one space. No affordable housing, and how that's going to be managed. We come back to management of how these systems are going to work. These are our questions time and time again, because, oh yes, it's going to be a managed building. Maybe I should have asked the question to the applicant. But the point is, we have to rely on these management organisations to cater for some of the essential services we are obliged to provide as a local authority. And we don't know the answers. Oh, it's not a planning consideration. Well, it is, because we're going to say, yes, 324 apartments can be built there. But do we not have an obligation of thinking about the management of these particular systems? I think we do, because they're our residents. And that's where I start to feel uncomfortable. I've made my comments about the affordable, and I agree with two previous speakers. It's uncomfortable, I think is probably the word to use. I just wanted to make that point, and I'll certainly listen to any other contributions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any further comments? Is anybody prepared to put forward a motion? Come back on it. We ask the applicant. I'm going to let Mike come back on the waste management.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think, again, I do recognise the issues, the concern about number of units and the fact there's other things happening in the council. I think it just needs to be brought back to the committee in terms of considering the planning application before you, And I appreciate there'll be other contexts that the council is considering at the minute, but it's a decision on the planning application before you at the moment. I think the key thing is that there is not a requirement for a development to demonstrate adherence to the local authority waste collection service. They do need to demonstrate a suitable waste collection service because that's a requirement of our local plan policies. That can be via private management company if that's the outcome, and that is what condition 17 allows for. It might be that they design something that the local waste authority is signed up to being able to collect to, and that's fine, and we would discharge the condition through that basis. But the fact that it includes both the provisions and the management means that if that design, if you like, doesn't meet that requirement, then we wouldn't discharge the condition until an alternative management arrangement is put in place. So again, these are concerns that the committee has, and I do recognise why they're there. But then in terms of the planning decision, you need to consider, are there planning conditions that can overcome those concerns and address those to make the scheme acceptable? That is the basis of which condition 17 has been set out.
Councillor Bowes.
I mean, after listening to all the comments from other contributors here, I'm minded to move approval of the application, whilst I'm not entirely sure about it because I think there are negatives to the proposal, but I will move it.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bowes.
I take on board some of the things about with parking as well, but I've been looking at it. I mean, I take on board about the younger demographic perhaps not going for car ownership so much. Well, by no means part of the younger demographic. I perhaps gone for that myself for years to go anyway. I also note that for those who don't own a car but might wish to drive, there is car hire facilities only half a mile away. And given what we've been told by the officers and other contributors here, I would like to second that motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, seconded motion. I think we call for a vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those against? 2. Any abstentions? No. That motion is carried and the officer's recommendation is approved. Would you like to sum up?
Yes, the application is approved subject to the conditions and obligations outlined in the main paper and update paper.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 7, the quarterly planning appeals report. We are asked to note, does anybody have any comments? Okay, that report is noted. We have no reason to exclude the press or public. Thank you, gentlemen. And we have therefore no confidential items. So I will declare this meeting closed at, where are we, 7:30. Thank you very much.